going to move on, Paul, and we're going to talk about Tottenham Hotspur. Now, of course, we saw Spurs over the previous few days take on Newcastle in a friendly over in Australia. What were your thoughts on that whole scenario and the backlash on social media? Was some of the criticism from fans fair, given the immediacy of the game following the Premier League's end?
I just don't see the point in the game. I mean, as a player, I used to hate it at the end of the season. I fortunately missed out on a couple of end of season games because I had international commitments. So the international players generally didn't have to go and play in these pointless games. But there's two sides to it. I get it. From a player's point of view, it's the last thing you want to do. It's an absolute drag at the end of the season. You've had a long, hard season. The last thing you want to do is get on a plane and go to the other side of the world and play another meaningless match against the team in the same league as you, who's feeling exactly the same as you are. I mean, the game is completely pointless from a footballer's point of view. You're not going to gain anything from it other than fatigue, injury, and a week shorter holiday than you would have had at the end of the season when you just want to rest. As a player, you absolutely hated it and you couldn't think of anything worse. From the club's point of view, you understand it. I've got my sister-in-law and brother-in-law live in Australia. They've got 3 kids. The middle girl, she plays a lot of football. She went there. They went to watch Tottenham's open training session. They went to the game and they absolutely loved it. And there was 70,000 people in the stadium. And they got to see the Premier League firsthand, which they don't get to see week in and week out. And the revenue, the relationship that it builds with a club, with the supporters, you understand why the clubs do it from the club's point of view. But as a player, honestly, you couldn't think of anything worse. But the other side of it for the club, the relationship, the revenue, the status that the club builds up, the fan base it builds up in a different part of the world, you understand why it's done. But as a player, you don't want it. You don't want to do it.
If we talk about some of the players then that featured, Pete, or one name not to mention particularly that didn't play, Ryan Sessegnon looks like he's leaving the club this window. I know we've discussed some exits potentially. Are we now expecting quite a few exits through the door? We know Ange has spoken quite openly. Can you give us some transfer news, please, in terms of outgoings for Tottenham this summer?
Yeah, I'd imagine Tottenham will be busy. Players in and out this summer as well. Ange has obviously spoken publicly that the squad needs bulking up as well. Yeah, it's probably looking at Ryan Sessegnon. It's probably really disappointing to see him leave on a free transfer. Came to Tottenham with so much potential from Fulham. I think he won EFL Player of the Year before his move to Tottenham as well. He was talked of, hyped up as being one of the best young players in the country and expecting high things of him. Just had so many injury problems at the club and hasn't been able to fulfill his potential. So he'll go and try and find a new club and get his career back on track, really. And it's obviously just didn't happen from a Tottenham. Other players on the move at Tottenham, we expect Emerson Royal to move on. There's been a bit of interest in him from AC Milan, still interest from Saudi Arabia as well. So he'll be somebody that Tottenham will definitely cash in on. Pierre-Emile Højbjerg is another player I'd expect to leave Tottenham this summer. He's been in and out of the team under Ange Postecoglou, but for me, he always did a good job when he did put him into the starting 11 as well. But I think he might seek a move away in search of regular first team football. And again, I'm sure there'll be other notable departures as well. We've got Ndombele, who's still playing in Turkey. Again, he's not going to figure in Tottenham's plans going forward. And you'll have a lot of those players who've been out on loan, Jed Spence, etc., who will probably be deemed surplus to requirements, who will be allowed to move on. You've got Brian Hill and others like that who, again, are well down the pecking order at Tottenham. And I think Ange will use the summer transfer window to sort of reshape the squad, offload unwanted players to boost his own transfer kitty, because I'm guessing he will want to go out early and make some signings to try and improve that Spurs squad for next season after the disappointment of missing out on a top 4 finish this year.
One name that's been linked, Paul, Dominic Solanke, great signing potentially for Tottenham. Do you think a big number 9 is inevitable this summer? Is that the position you think that Spurs really need to nail down to try and secure that sort of top 4 status going into next season?
Well, they've never had one. Obviously, Harry Kane's led the line for a number of years, 30-plus goals every season. And the conversation's always been who plays if Harry Kane doesn't play. Thankfully, from a Tottenham point of view, he played most weeks and he scored. But actually, they tried to replace him. And what they've done historically is get a wide man who can play as a 9. If they actually now want a number 9, then this is the summer to go and do it. Whether Solanke's the right one or not, I'm not sure. I mean, he's had a decent season this season. He's been a Bournemouth side that finished mid-table, and he scored 19 Premier League goals, which is, it's a great haul for him. But a lot of those goals all came at the same time in a rich vein of form. I'm not so sure that he's done it in previous seasons or sustained it over any kind of length of time. So it would be a big step for him to go to Tottenham. There'd be a big level of expectation on him. Somebody like even Tony, I could see going into the Tottenham side, but then you'd question about the way that Ange plays. Does Tony have the work rate? Will he press from the front the way that Ange wants him to? But actually, that is a position that I would like to see them recruit, because Son has done excellently well this year. He's carried the mantle of the goals, but I think he's better coming off the left-hand side, cutting inside on his right. Richarlison's not done it again this season. Yes, he's been missing a few games, but his numbers are not where you would expect them to be. And he had the opportunity to take on the mantle, the role of that number 9, to play every week as that figurehead striker. He hasn't done that, although he does it for the Brazilian national team. So I do think that's an area that we'll look at. But the other worrying thing, when do Spurs go and lump a load of cash on one player? They don't do that. That's not their recruitment strategy. You look at the way that Vicario's come in, Van der Ven's come in, Bentancur's come in, Kulusevski's come in. Paratici's fingerprints, his paw prints all over those signings. But the recruitment has been excellent in with what they've spent and what they've got for their recruitment. Richarlison, I think, was the last one, wasn't it? What was he? 50 million they went and spent from Everton. And anything in that kind of bracket and above is what it's going to take to get the number 9 that they want. And unless they clear a lot of that dead wood, what Pete was talking about in the dressing room that they've got or got out on loan, I just can't see Spurs going into the market and spending between 50 and 75 million on that number 9.
Who is most inevitable, Pete, out of all of them? If one of them is to sign, is it likely to be Tony because of his price tag at, as you've sort of quoted before, £40 million? Do you think, is Dominic Solanke looking like it might be more than that? Or actually, could they go in for someone like Sergio Girassi, who we know has that £15 million release clause, or euro release clause, if I'm mistaken?
Yeah, if you're looking value for money, Girassi would be the one. As you said, he's got that release clause of just £17.5 million. He's had a great season in Germany. There will be a lot of interest in Girassi, I think, this summer, following his goal-scoring exploits in the Bundesliga. But then Stuttgart are doing everything they can to keep hold of him. They've got Champions League football to look forward to next season as well. So maybe that might come into the striker's thinking himself that he might want to stay. For me, Ivan Toney's probably the one that stands out to me if Tottenham are to go and get a new number 9. He's got 1 year left in his contract with Brentford. I think Brentford are reluctantly ready to let him move on. Obviously, we know Ivan Toney's had his problems this season, coming back to play midway through the season after that betting ban and everything else. But I think you would get a hungry player if you were to go and get Ivan Toney, somebody who wants to prove a point. He wants to be playing regularly in that England squad as well. And his overall game, although he's not maybe much of a presser, which is maybe question marks over how he would fit into Ange Postecoglou's team, his overall game, he can lead the line on his own. He can link play up as well. I think he's underrated for me, Ivan Toney, and what he does bring to the game. He's more than just a goal scorer. And I think if you can get him for around £40 million, I think it would be a good piece of business by Tottenham if they were to do it, because I think if they do follow up their interest in Dominic Solanke, you're probably looking at £50 million plus for him as well. And like Paul said, he's had a very good season this year with Bournemouth, but maybe consistently he's not been a regular goal scorer in the Premier League as well. But yeah, he's a talented player. There's no doubts about that. He's on the fringes of that England squad as well. But for me, if you're looking at ready-made goal scorer to go into the team, Ivan Toney is probably the one.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.